Robert Hilland is a former police officer and FBI special agent. He worked in law enforcement for 30 years. If you watch True Crime Network programs such as ABC's 2020, Cold Case Files, and On the Case with Paula Zahn, you'll recognize him immediately. For example, he was a contributor for Investigation Discovery's On the Case with Paula Zahn's Season 5, Episode 6, that aired in 2011, titled Twice is No Accident, about the John Smith case. Hilland has been interviewed on this case by NBC's Dateline, and the case is covered extensively in this book because that's how Hilland met John Edward. John Edward is a psychic medium who had a successful TV show crossing over with John Edwards in 2000s. I'm sharing audio of a clip from the show over here.
Welcome to Crossing Over. My name's John Edward. What I'd like to do is just kind of go over some of my symbols so that when we start connecting you and your family or friends that are coming through, it'll better help you understand what I'm talking about. You're going to hear me talk about people being above you, that's older, to your side around the same age, and below you would be younger. When I get their names, I could be off by the way it sounds, but not the first part, the initial, or what it kind of sounds like. Your job is just to confirm and verify what's coming through, not to do your own reading, not to do your own session. Don't reach for something to be what you want it to be. Just let it be what it is. Keep an open mind. I'm going to go to where I'm being pulled. Why is Niagara Falls significant?
We were just there.
You were just at Niagara Falls. Okay.
Me and my daughter.
Did you find a feather there?
Yes. And
did you tell your daughter that was from Daddy?
Yes.
I have somebody coming through who's acknowledging they were shot by a family member. This is very strange to me. I don't know if they're trying to tell me that they were together and goofing off, and this gun went off.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I don't think that he realized that he was shot. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And then he thought he was kidding. Did someone in your family pass at the hands of somebody else?
Oh, God. She did, yeah.
Was she shot?
Yes.
But I'm having a vehicle feeling also.
My sister Clara came through today. She was shot twice from behind, and they took her car.
This might sound weird. I don't know if they found like condoms in the car or what this is. I feel like something's found there that's completely out of character for what should have been found there.
It's prostitutes that were involved in this.
Were there 3 children for you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 2 living?
Mm-hmm.
There were 4 pregnancies though.
Mm-hmm.
There's an Eileen, Ellen, Helen name here. Who is this?
Helen.
Is that Mom?
My mother.
Okay, see, that's her way of validating what I'm saying. Okay? Now, I don't know if you're her baby girl or if you're the youngest, but she's making me feel like, tell my baby I have her baby. Okay, that's kind of how she's coming across.
Thank you.
Again, I'd like to say that when I do this each day, it's not just for the people I deliver messages to, but it's for all those loved ones who we acknowledge and validate on the other side. Of course, it doesn't change the importance of giving the same gift to those you still have in your life today, now. So always remember to communicate, validate, and appreciate those who are here today so that someone like myself never has to be the person to do it for you. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Crossing Over.
And here he is on Dr. Phil's program, picking signals from random people. So he just throws a random lifeline out there that he was getting a fire energy from a particular spot where audience was seated. And 2 women get up, he doesn't know them, but tells them what criminal story they are connected to, and then goes back to the query from Dr. Phil about the woman in the front row, and correctly predicted what her story is. Let's just say he has an extra natural sense of picking up things ordinary human beings don't. And he solved cold case homicide crimes with the FBI agent Hilland that the Federal Bureau of Investigations couldn't. He has been doing this for 40 years. Chasing Evil, Shocking Crimes, Supernatural Forces, and an FBI Agent's Search for Hope and Justice by Robert Hilland, John Edward with Natasha Stoynoff was published last year by St. Martin's Press. In this true-crime book, Hilland and Edward have collaborated with Natasha Stoynoff, a journalist, author, and screenwriter who has been a staff writer with People magazine for more than a decade and also works as a freelancer. Last year, she interviewed Drew Barrymore for the cover of AARP, American Association of Retired Persons, a non-profit advocacy group for Americans who are 50 and older. Remember Mulder and Scully of X-Files? The show with the tagline "The Truth is Out There" featured 2 FBI special agents who investigated criminal cases that almost always were rooted in unexplained phenomena, which Mulder always attributed to paranormal stuff, while Scully always had a scientific explanation ready to discount Mulder's fanciful theory. X-Files always showed Mulder as being right and the world as being full of mystical, cryptic anomalies that the average mind and the FBI was not ready to believe. The show captured the imagination of a generation of viewers by honing in on people's distrust of government and corruption of unelected institutions and public's paranoia and obsession with mythical, supernatural, parapsychological and extraterrestrial elements caused by inexplicable, unknown or hidden elements. Episodes covered everything from UFOs, criminals with freaky abilities, like in Squeeze, Genderbender, Shapes, ghosts, like How the Ghost Stole Christmas, vampires in Bad Blood, to people displaying psychic ability, remember Leonard Betts, and precognition in the amazing Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, mind control in Kitsunegare, and even time travel, like in Synchrony and Past Lives, as they did in the episode The Field Where I Died. Current sociological events such as technological advancement, as shown in episodes Space and Ghost in the Machine, mass shootings in Folie à Deux, industrialized food production in Our Town, cloning or genetic mutations in Eve and the Host, impact of climate change in episodes like Darkness Falls, Detour, Dreamland, and Field Trip, and indigenous tribal pain like Anasazi, Blessing Away. All of these sociological events wormed their way into the story arcs. The series is also memorable for flipping the traditional gender roles associated with men and women. Here, David Duchovny was the idealist, the emotional, passionate one, the conspiracy theorist, the unconventional investigator with gut feelings, who was ready to accept the most outrageous story, while Gillian Anderson was left to rein in his wild beliefs with scientific reasoning, logic, objectivity, balance, and skepticism. X-Files and its dry humor is part of American pop culture to this day. There are loads of books, articles, and websites dedicated to it, and a reboot is unfortunately in the works as well. Unlike 2005's Supernatural, that featured two brothers whose family business was fighting monsters to keep the world a safe and livable place, 1993's X-Files had something to say about the world we live in and its sci-fi and paranormal possibilities and government's intrusion into citizens' lives. And if you're a fan of 1990's film Ghost, Whoopi Goldberg's psychic helping the ghost of murdered Patrick Swayze to bring his killer to justice, you'll get the drift on what to expect in this book, which mentions the movie, by the way. Chasing Evil goes into similar territory, with a psychic helping an FBI investigation to get to the truth, solve a crime, nab a suspect. This is a true story, and you'll have to take a leap of faith into their journey. Whether you are a Scully, a skeptic, or a Mulder, a believer, the facts given in this book will either surprise you or validate your beliefs. You'll either think of John Edward as a street-smart, quick-thinking con man making educated guesses about strangers, jiske tukke chalte hain, or a man who has a connection to the dead people and their energy and auras left behind on planet Earth, in a dimension impenetrable and undecipherable to the naked eye, and who uses that connection to help ordinary people deal with their grief, pain, and guilt, and also helps the law enforcement in finding bodies of victims of violent crimes. Edward frequently talks about skeptics and why his gift is real. A few weeks ago, he was on Shetty's podcast, that is on 28th of January 2026, explaining why people should believe him.
I've put myself through positions of being studied and tested. I've read for people in positions. I've made sure that when I read, I'm giving information, not philosophy.
Because of his former employer, Robert Hilland makes it clear right off the bat in the book that, quote, In accordance with my obligations as a former FBI employee pursuant to my FBI employment agreement, this book has undergone a pre-publication review for the purpose of identifying prohibited disclosures, but has not been reviewed for editorial content or accuracy. The opinions expressed in this book are mine and not those of the FBI or any other government agency." Unquote. The story begins in Chapter 1, Two Worlds, at 2 to 5% mark, in which it's 1991. Hilland is a 23-year-old patrolman working in New Jersey, where his nickname is Big Bird. Quote, I'm quoting from that chapter. The date was October 4th, 1991, and John Smith had come to the department to report his second wife, Fran, missing. Her family told police that Fran was recovering from a broken hip. She suffered from osteoporosis and slipped on a wet floor while getting out of the bathtub. She was housebound, in pain, unable to sleep, and unable to get around without a walker. Unquote. So the idea that she'd just get up and run or disappear on her daughter from an earlier marriage and leave her property and assets was not likely. Hilland would later learn that Smith, a used car salesman with long work hours, had a common-law wife that he still saw on weekends. It was reasonable to suppose that Fran had found out or had grown suspicious on why her husband was away from home so much. And that was not all, because 17 years earlier in Ohio, this same John Smith had reported his first wife, Janice, as missing as well. To have two wives missing would make John Smith either a very unlucky man or a very suspicious one. But right now, in the year 1991, Hilland was just passing by and happened to lock eyes with some guy talking to an officer through a glass window in the lobby. This eye contact was at the end of Hilland's shift when he was passing through the department's dispatch area and saw, quote, a thin, pale man with reddish hair who looked 40-ish with a meek disposition, with eyes like a shark's the second before it rips you apart. A devil with an innocuous name, John Smith. Unquote. Of course, Hilland forgot all about him till 6 years later in 1997, when he started a new job working as FBI Special Agent for New York City's Cold Case Squad in downtown Manhattan. Cold cases are crimes or suspected crimes that are unsolved, in which investigation either did not yield any viable evidence or evidence could not be tabulated due to lack of technology. These get stalled and remain unresolved pending new evidence. Today one hears more frequent news reports in American media on breakthroughs in decades-old cases of murdered and missing people because of advancement in forensic analysis, especially DNA comparison. Hilland's office was near the location shoot of Law & Order. Quote, on coffee breaks, I'd sit on a bench behind 26th Federal Plaza and see Law & Order actors playing cops and criminals, with their cameras and lights, their imaginary world next to our very real one. Unquote. He is 30 years old and married. He has 2 kids, Connor and newborn Katie, and 2 dogs, a retriever, Chelsea, and a bulldog, Rose. In his long career in the FBI, his family life came under strain. As a freshman in FBI's cold case unit, his office mate Richie D. Stano tells him that, quote, this passage is from Chapter 1, Two Worlds, at 2 to 5% mark. Quote, homicides can be some of the easiest cases to work. Bad guy 1 kills bad guy 2 over money, drugs, power, or a woman. Change the names, dates, and locations, and it's the same case over and over. He grabbed an armload of files from his desk and dumped them on mine. Your first cases. Some are old dogs that won't ever be solved. For others, your murderers are already in prison for something else, or maybe even dead. Don't kill yourself on them. We got hundreds more, he said. Then he pointed at me with a warning. And remember, he added, big cases, big problems. Little cases, little problems. No cases? Get the picture? Unquote. It just so happened that a year later, Hilland picked the file on the missing wives, 23-year-old Janice Hartman in 1974 and 49-year-old Fran Smith from 1991. He picked the file from a detective working in his old department in New Jersey. He had to fight to work on the case even though he worked for the FBI New York Bureau, and FBI already had an office in Newark to deal with New Jersey cases. His direct supervisor said no, and he had to get permission from the supervisor's boss, Dennis Buckby, who told him to just look into outstanding leads. That's it. Meanwhile, John Edward from Long Island, New York, was into vibrations, not spooks. He could predict who was calling before a person picked up the phone. An only child of an Irish cop and an Italian psychic-believing mom, this is also from Chapter 1, Two Worlds, between 2 to 5% mark. As a 15-year-old, he started reading, quote, books on psychic phenomena, spirit guides, metaphysics, and spiritualism. He honed his abilities communicating with the other side using energy. He saw pictures, heard words, and felt sensations. Soon he was doing readings for friends and at local psychic fairs. By 16, he was making a name for himself in the psychic community in Long Island, where he lived with his mother and grandmother after his parents eventually split. His father was not happy about this new path. "You're not allowed to use my last name," John Sr. demanded. "I won't have you besmirch the family name." John Jr. obeyed and used his middle name instead, creating the name he'd become known for professionally, John Edward. His father had a second command for his son. He must never engage with law enforcement and risk embarrassing him. His father once asked, with a smirk, "How come whenever a psychic works with the police, they always say, 'The body will be found near water'? The planet's 90% water. That's stacking the deck in a psychic's favor. Psychics are not helpful on cases. Real cops don't use psychics." But it was inevitable that clients would reach out to John hoping to find lost loved ones. One woman who booked an appointment his first year wanted to locate her missing niece. The niece and her live-in boyfriend both struggled with mental issues. One day she vanished. Her purse, credit cards, wallet, and jacket were all home, but she was gone without a trace. During the reading, John immediately got details. The young woman had been murdered, and he saw the scene like a movie clip in front of him. "I described who I thought was the perpetrator," John remembers, "and the details fit the girl's boyfriend, down to his looks, the car he drove, and where he lived. And then I got a name, Michael." The client immediately latched onto the name. "My son Michael passed," she said tearfully. "They must be together in the afterlife. He's bringing her through." John didn't feel that he was getting that Michael, but the woman insisted. Her emotional outburst and need to connect with her deceased son soon derailed the reading, shutting down any new information. Investigators later arrested the niece's next-door neighbor named Michael. His looks, car, and location were similar to the information John got in the reading about the boyfriend. Unquote. Despite this case and other successes, John Edward continued his master's degree in healthcare and public administration. He worked as a phlebotomist at a hospital and as a ballroom instructor. The psychic mediumship was just a side hobby or stint. In 1995, at the age of 25, he quit his jobs and started making money holding regular sessions called readings of the other dimension and seminars. In 1998, he appeared on Larry King Live, CNN's influential nightly talk show that meant you had arrived on the national stage. But Hilland did not hear about Edward on Larry King Live. No, he heard him on the radio. When he was stuck in traffic and searched the radio for music, and ended up listening to Scott Shannon and co-host DJ Todd Pettingill's The Big Show on 95.5 WPLJ, who had John Edward as a guest. And Hilland thought it was all a load of bull crap. This is given in Chapter 2, The Psychic, the Background, the Game Plan. Meanwhile, this book recreates the coordination between different field offices and agents and dull, tedious work of sifting through paperwork. For example, Hilland sent a request to FBI Data Center in Butte, Montana, on any activity linked to Smith's name, social security number, and date of birth, and got 30 large boxes with the name tag John Smith. During his research, Hilland came to believe that John Smith was involved in the disappearance of not just his wives, but other women, for example, some prostitutes. But without hard proof for the body of any wife, It was hard to build a case against him. So one day, he was again stuck in traffic. He was listening to John Edward giving one of his readings on air to randomly placed calls from strangers. Even though he still didn't believe that Edward had a gift, he could not ignore that he had predicted most of the caller's dead mother's past, present, and future accurately. So in utter desperation, Hilland gets Edward's number from the radio station and makes an appointment to meet at his Long Island office. This happens in Chapter 4, Wounded Women of the Night, at 11 to 14% mark. This is where the book becomes interesting and fun. Hilland collects a number of items belonging to Fran Smith out of evidence locker, as given in Chapter 5, The Chosen. Coat, a pair of eyeglasses, a makeup case, a hairbrush, a hair roller set, and a stationery set, so that Edward could get a vibe or energy off them. As his assistant tells Hilland, he uses them to get a feel for the person's energy. The assistant said on the phone, "It will help him connect with the person you're looking for." Before we left the office, I quickly grabbed a few extras from female colleagues: a bracelet, a compact mirror, a woman's watch, and a necklace. Control items, I thought. If this guy was legit, he should be able to tell the difference between what belonged to Fran and what didn't, right? I was still sitting on a fence of extremes when it came to this psychic. Part of me still thought he was a fraud, and the lawman in me wanted to take him down. I even researched reasons to arrest him: wire fraud, mail fraud, and yet my stubborn heart wanted to believe he was the real deal. Unquote. The meeting is recounted here, and it is part funny and part illuminating. Funny because Hilland, the skeptical one, thinks Edward is like Harry Potter, while the other officer, a New Jersey detective, is a fan and is correctly identified by Edward as being non-FBI. I'm just going to read from the pages given between 14 to 18% mark from Chapter 5, The Chosen, to describe the process Edward took with Hilland and Dansman, the non-FBI detective. Quote, "We sat at a large wooden desk in a plain, unadorned room. No candles, no incense, no crystal balls. My assistant tells me you need help with the case," John began. "The first thing I need to say is that if I end up helping you, it must stay private between us. I don't want you to mention it to the press. I don't want to be in any paperwork." "That's not a problem," I told him. "Good. Have either of you worked with a psychic before?" "I have," said Dansman, "a few times in other cases." "Never," I said. "Let me explain how I work. The information comes to me from my spirit guides in 3 different ways: clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience. That means I see pictures, I hear thoughts, and I get feelings or sensations. I will interpret what I'm seeing, hearing, and feeling using my own frame of reference, and hopefully you'll understand it. Some of the information you might understand right away, some you might not. It's important that you write everything down, even if you don't understand. It could make sense to you later." We took out our notebooks and pens, ready to go. "I'll get people above you, to your side, and below you," John continued, meaning older, the same age, and younger. "I might be off by a name, but not by an initial. And one more thing," he emphasized. "Do not give me any information or try to steer me in any direction. I want to describe to you exactly what I'm getting without interference." We nodded. "Before we begin, do you have any questions?" "Yes," I said. "I want to confirm. This is an active case. It's not our practice to discuss our investigations with the public, so as far as I'm concerned, you were never here," John said, cutting me off. "I prefer it that way. Nothing personal, but I don't like to get involved with law enforcement. My only condition in helping you guys is that you don't mention to anyone that you met with me." Good, we were on the same page, though I could see slight disappointment on Dansman's face. "Let's get started," said John. "Did you bring any belongings of the person you're looking for?" John asked. Dansman pulled the items from a bag and placed them on John's desk. John closed his eyes, took a deep breath, cupped his palms together, and focused on them. After a minute, he reached over and moved the control items, bracelet, mirror, watch, necklace, from the group and put them in a pile to the side. I was stunned. He figured it out right away. I don't know what these things are, said John, but they have nothing to do with the reason you're here, he said. Dansman and I glanced at each other. Point 2 for the psychic. John returned his focus to Fran's items and picked up her eyeglasses. He looked up almost past us as if he was staring at someone behind us. I am seeing a woman. She looks older than her actual age. She's crossed over. She has 2 names like Mary Ann, Barbara Ann, but people called her by her second name. There's an F sound like Fern or Fran. Wait, it's Fran. My heart raced. Dansman's eyes were locked on Edward. The next chunk of information came in a rush of words. She was vain about her appearance. She had breast implants. They are showing me serial numbers on them, and dyed blonde hair, blue eyes. She wore a lot of makeup. Fran was a smoker. I smelled cigarette smoke and strong perfume, like when a person tries to cover up the smoke scent with a lot of perfume. She's also showing me that she couldn't walk, like she broke her leg. She's showing me crutches. I feel a strong pain in the back of my head. Was she struck in the head? Yes. She was hit in the back of the head with something. She didn't see it coming. Weird, John said, still looking beyond us. I feel like she was tricked into going somewhere by someone she trusted. A boyfriend or husband. He's still here. He hasn't crossed. He has a simple J name, like John or Jim or Joe, and a second S name, very common, like Smith. I shivered. This was unreal. John put down the glasses and picked up the hairbrush. After she was hit in the head, the JS name, let's call him Smith, strangled her to make sure she was dead. Not like a bloodbath or anything. It was like he knocked her out with one blow, then strangled her. I sat back in my chair stunned. What the actual hell? Was he seeing all this play out in front of him? I looked over at Dansman, who was equally shocked. I barely had time to register the horror he described when another rush of information came. He was much younger than her, John continued. Maybe 10 years. She was angry. Was there another woman? She thought there was another woman, but not in the same state where they were living. She's showing me stairs. They were upstairs on a 3rd floor, if not higher. There was an argument. She confronted him about a bunch of things, not just one issue. It feels like a whole bunch of different things. Smith was lying to her and she knew it. She called him out on it. He felt like his worlds were crashing together. John shook his head. Man, this guy has major control issues. Major. He needs to be in control. Whatever she did or said, she was taking that control away from him, and he didn't like it. Dansman and I scribbled notes as fast as we could, trying to keep up. The woman F name, Fran, was fed up and demanded Smith take her somewhere. He was lying to her about so many things. I don't understand this. She's showing me furniture. Did he steal her furniture? There's also a second home. Like I said, she was calling him out on all his lies. Dansman and I kept nodding. Unquote. A bit of a timeout here. All of the information that Edward has given right now is true. John Smith had taken Fran's furniture from another house and given it to a woman. He also was seeing someone on the side. Now I'll continue reading from Chapter 5, The Chosen. Goat? Dansman and I kept nodding. John kept getting hit after hit like a pinball whacking against the bells in a machine. Tilt, tilt, tilt. But not only was John confirming details we already knew, he was giving information we didn't know. Details that made sense, information that rang true that we could follow up on. We kept scribbling. He kept talking. So Smith calms her down. He appeases her somehow, like, "Don't worry, honey, I'll show you everything is okay." I see them walking out of an apartment building or condo. She's using crutches. It's in the daytime, not at night. Wait, other people saw them leaving, a couple who live in the same building. It feels like they were walking in as she and Smith were leaving. Oh, John looked at Dansman. You interviewed these people? Dansman nodded. And they told you they saw them leaving together, but the timing doesn't line up? It's like he kills her on a Saturday, but you guys don't know she's missing until a week later? Again, Dansman nodded. He was speechless. So Smith helps this woman Fran to the car. He drives. She thinks she is going somewhere to see something she believes he's lying about. He's taking her to this place. It feels right off a major highway. It's ironic. She was nervous and pissed off because she knew she was about to expose his lie. And he was nervous and pissed off because he knew she was about to expose his lie. They both knew. So whatever this place is, it has an industrial feel to it, like metal and steel, blacktop concrete. I hear the highway. It's near a major highway with lots of traffic. There are many doors, metal garage doors. Unquote. Again a timeout over here. Ultimately, when John Smith confessed to the killing years later, he said that he had disposed of her body in the garbage disposal of the factory where he worked. Now back to chapter 5. Quote, I was so charged up I couldn't stay quiet any longer. Like a public storage unit? I asked. John's eyes lit up. Yes, it absolutely feels like that. Definitely New Jersey, not far from where they lived and where he worked. Again, Dansman and I exchanged a glance. Smith had that public storage facility in New Brunswick, New Jersey, where Fran's furniture was supposed to be. John continued. It was still daylight. I see him pointing to a door and drawing her attention away from what he was about to do. Then he just did it. John's eyes darted around as if he was watching it happen. For her, it was in an instant, he said. She didn't even know what happened. She was unconscious before she hit the ground. Then, instantaneously, he pulls her inside whatever this thing is, this garage unit, and closes the door so nobody can see what's happening. John paused, as if trying to process the deluge of images. I had to ask. He said not to steer him in a direction, but he didn't say not to ask questions. What did he do with her body? John glanced at me, then gazed again beyond me. He squinted, like he was trying to see or understand something. She's not in one piece, he said. He dismembered her and put the pieces in something. She's encapsulated. What do you mean? I asked. Joan's brow furrowed. She's encapsulated in something. I keep seeing cylinders. I'm not sure what this is. He's very smart. Whatever he put her in, it's got no smell and it's somewhere no one would suspect there was a body, or pieces of a body. Like what? I don't know. I keep seeing cylinders. Her body is in these cylinders, but also in something to keep her preserved, like fluid or concrete. I'm sure Dansman was thinking what I was thinking. Smith worked at an industrial company called Carborundum, which produced refractory, heat-resistant concrete blocks. You know when you see a new development being built and they have these huge concrete, I don't know what you call them, storm drains? John asked. Sewer drains? I asked. Yeah, like that. When you find her, her body parts will be remarkably intact, well preserved. Unquote. Again, this information is also important because at 72% to 76% mark in chapter 20, then I saw her face. It is written in the book that, quote, Smith's factory produced masonry blocks of different sizes. Smith had 24-hour access to the plant, so there was decent reason to believe he might have done something with Fran's body there. At first, I wondered if he had tossed it into a burning hot kiln, but after researching kiln mechanics, I ruled that out. The factory also had large stormwater drain pipes that ran into a creek and fed into the nearby Raritan River. As soon as I saw those pipes, I searched every inch of them along with the surrounding area. I found nothing. I had crisscrossed the 40 square acres of Carborundum by foot so many times that the new owners of the land knew me well enough to invite me to their son's wedding. I dug, searched, inspected, researched, jackhammered, drilled, and trod on every blade of grass. Unquote. Hilland didn't find anything over there. And now back to chapter 5, as Edward continues his reading, where Hilland is now very impressed. Quote, My heart was racing now. I was hanging on his every word. So we will find her? John paused. He looked thoughtfully at whatever invisible presence was behind us. I think so, but it's not going to be easy, he said, and it won't be any time soon. Suddenly, John's mood shifted. He stared at me, confused and angry. I don't understand this. Wait, why are you really here? Shit, I thought. He knows I wanted to take him down. I certainly didn't feel that way anymore. Now I felt in awe of him and shaken up, disoriented. I wondered if what he was doing was real. How else to explain the information he was getting that he couldn't know? The skeptic in me was reaching for other answers, but I couldn't find them. John was staring at me, now baffled. You already solved this case, he said. You already found her, the girl in the box, down the side of the road in a ravine. I can see the newspaper headlines. Lady in the box. You've already got her. Dansman and I looked at each other confused. We had no idea what he was talking about and told him so. I'm seeing a line of police cars along a rural county road and a box on the side of the road. We don't know what this is, I told him. He focused again on images invisible to us, sights and sounds we couldn't hear. A moment later he relaxed and sat back in his chair, a look of understanding on his face. Unquote. This is important because he's referring to Janice Hartman. This is something that was confirmed by Hilland later on in the investigation, as mentioned in Chapter 15, Lady in a Box, at 52% to 56% mark, when he discovered that Janice Hartman's body had been recovered a long time ago, but had been placed as an unidentified or an unknown woman, a Jane Doe basically, and had been buried in a graveyard. I'm going to read the passage from Chapter 15, Lady in a Box now, so that you get a clear picture. Quote, this is what the detective tells him. He said that in 1980, remember that Janice Hartman disappeared in 1974. A road crew was fixing potholes along a county road outside of Hammond, Indiana. As they were patching a hole, they noticed a plywood box on the side of the road down by a ravine. A couple of the workers went down and moved the box closer to the road. When they opened it, a skull rolled out. Brian, is this for real? Everything Mike told us about what he saw in the box was there. Mike is Michael Smith, John Smith's brother. The legs were cut off right below the knees. The clothes were all rolled up and tucked inside. Everything he described was in the box. What did they do with it? They couldn't identify her back then. They ran articles in the newspapers but came up empty. They called her the girl in the box. I gripped the phone tighter. Potts continued. They assumed she must have been a prostitute from Chicago. The Indiana State Police still have the box and all its contents in evidence. I'm going over tomorrow to review it all. What about the body? She's been buried as a Jane Doe in a pauper's grave for 18 years. Doesn't even have a tombstone, just a marker apparently. Unquote. Now that's Janice Hartman, and Edward had also predicted that she'll be found in an unmarked grave amongst hundreds of graves. And that came true as well. This was from Chapter 15, Lady in a Box. In Chapter 16, Premonitions, the Police Officer, the President, it is confirmed that it is only after the recovery of Janice Hartman's body that in October 2000 that John Smith is arrested for her murder. Smith was convicted of Janice Hartman's murder. Of course, the question that will come to your mind is why can't the murdered or missing simply tell Edward where they are? It's a question that Hilland, by his own admission, asked Edward 1,000,000 times. And in Chapter 16 he says, quote, a question that John would try to answer so I would understand it over and over. Look, I get it. I want that too, John said. After the movie, What Lies Beneath, I wanted to say to Fran, why can't you tell me I'm buried by the big tree or whatever? You clearly know where you are. Why don't you just tell us? Why can't we know? Well, I asked, why can't we? In my world, it's no different than a parent not telling a child what to do, because they have lessons to learn. It's not about getting answers or about success or failure. It's about the journey you need to take. John's ice cream was melting. I waved to the bartender for another vodka. What journey do I need to take? I asked him. He paused. We don't know yet. Unquote. This is in Chapter 16, Premonitions, the Police Officer, the President. He continues to meet Edward and their bond grows to brotherhood. Edward tells Hilland about his own past, his parents, his grandparents, things Hilland didn't know about his own family. The John Smith case takes up half of the book. Its resolution is unsatisfying to both Hilland and I. Smith got a non-prosecution deal from prosecutor's office over Fran Smith's murder. Of course, there's more in this true crime book. For example, Edward helps Hilland by giving otherworldly details that his spirit guides showed him about other cases. The 1958 murder of police officer Charles Bernowski, 41, in Rahway, New Jersey. Edward's info, that is, fingerprint in the garage of a car dealership, led to the arrest of convicted murderer Robert Zirinsky for the cop's murder, as given in Chapter 16, Premonitions, the Police Officer, the President. 9/11 and its aftermath is given in Chapter 17, Axis of Evil, and Chapter 18, Fathers, and runs from 59 to 67% mark. The missing George Smith and the rape of a teenage girl, Jane, on Royal Caribbean's Brilliance of the Seas cruise ship in 2005, in which George Smith, a newlywed on his honeymoon with wife Jennifer Smith, disappeared after a night of partying. Hilland clearly believes a bunch of 16 to 20-year-old boys killed George and speaks of evidence proving the same in Chapter 19, The Honeymooners, at 67 to 72% mark. Football player Michael Vick's 2007 case, where he was alleged to breed dogs to fight at gambling arenas, is given in Chapter 23, Dogfights. Vick played for Atlanta Falcons and was also accused of killing dogs. There's even a case from a former Soviet Socialist republic, which is not named. Neither is the political candidate who was killed off with his driver and bodyguard, for which the police over there arrested a champion athlete and a businessman who was dying of cancer, by the way, and US authorities were simply asked to verify and validate that arrest. Hilland led that team and found out that the country's president's son had ordered the hit, but nothing happened. The president remained in power. This case is discussed in Chapter 21, Goat Eyes and Whitey. In Chapter 22, Soccer in the Jungle, Hilland handled a major weapons theft case in Guyana, South America, when he was a supervisory special agent of the FBI headquarters polygraph unit. In 2008, Hilland was promoted to run the FBI polygraph program in D.C. and was deployed to Afghanistan. He was angry about 9/11 and Daniel Pearl's murder and wanted revenge. But 4 months later, he had nothing but love in his heart and returned home 30 pounds lighter, as written in Chapter 23, Dogfights. Annie Marie Lay, a 24-year-old Vietnamese descent Yale student, vanished from her Ivy League University's campus in Connecticut 5 days before her wedding. She entered a medical lab building and never got out. Ray Clark, also 24 years old, took care of the lab's mice and rats. He was suspected of the crime. Hilland was involved in this case as a polygraph examiner. The young woman's blood and hair was found in the lab. Hilland gets a call from Edward, who tells him to look for a mini fridge and then to a door to the left of the fridge, where he says the body will be. It turns out to be a utility room. Then Edward tells Hilland over the phone that she's right there between something, between pipes, between walls. And Hilland finds out that men's room is right next to this utility room. And cadaver dogs find Annie Marie Lay in the pipe chase, the narrow space between walls through which plumbing is run, between the men's room and the utility room. This case is covered in Chapter 24, Lady in the Wall. And the book ends with the resolution of the 2015 case of the 5-year-old boy Noah Smith, who went missing from his recovering drug-addicted parents' trailer. By now, Hilland was FBI's supervisory special agent in the Richmond Division. One of the programs he oversaw was crimes against children, and that's how he got involved in this case. The FBI's evidence response team combed the area by Noah's home, the woods nearby, and the local dump, finding nothing. So Hilland is guided by Edward once again on the phone. In his search right at the back of the trailer, Edward tells him to look for an X-Wing fighter jet, a Star Wars toy that Luke Skywalker flew in Star Wars. And Hilland finds that toy right next to a septic tank behind the trailer, and that septic tank contains the boy's remains. Noah Smith's mother was arrested. This case is covered in Chapter 25, Noah's Fighter Plane, at 92 to 96% mark. The book is a New York Times bestseller, a Library Journal Best Book of 2025, and got a starred review from Publishers Weekly. Like I said in the beginning of this review, it's a matter of belief, and this book contains cases in which Hilland worked with Edward successfully. As Edward says at the end in epilogue, quote, "When the time is right and the spirit world is ready, we'll hear from them. The other side knows how to reach us." Unquote. There are a lot of kooks around the world, and certainly in Pakistan. Some people are more prone to latch on to superstition and conspiracy theories. This true crime book is not an endorsement of every medium or psychic you come across.